Mr. Parker, the card you left on file has been declined. The banquet manager did not raise his voice. He did not have to. The band had just stopped playing, the lights over the dance floor had dimmed, and more than 300 guests were waiting for the bride and groom's final dance. His words traveled through the ballroom like a crack running across a sheet of glass. Every conversation stopped. At the front of Chicago's Aurelia Grand Hotel, beneath a ceiling dripping with crystal chandeliers, my ex-husband stood frozen beside a 7-tier wedding cake. Thousands of white roses covered the stage. A champagne tower glowed under warm golden lights. Behind him, a giant screen played photographs of Ethan Parker and Vanessa Reed smiling against sunsets, fountains, and luxury hotel balconies. They looked perfect in every picture. In real life, Ethan's face was beginning to fall apart. "Run it again," he said. He tried to sound calm, but I could see the muscles tightening in his jaw from the back of the room. "There's nothing wrong with that card." The manager handed the black card back to an employee. She inserted it into the payment terminal a second time. A few seconds passed. Then came the same cold electronic tone. "Transaction declined." The manager glanced at the screen. "I'm afraid this is not an issue with the credit limit, sir." Ethan's shoulders stiffened. "Then what is it?" "The account has been permanently closed." The ballroom went completely silent. Vanessa stood near the cake table, still holding the silver knife they had used for the ceremonial cutting. Her custom wedding gown cost nearly $20,000. The train covered half the stage and diamonds glittered around her throat. But no amount of lace or jewelry could hide the panic spreading across her face. Ethan snatched the card from the employee. "That's impossible. I confirmed the card information 3 weeks ago." The banquet manager remained professionally calm. "Mr. Parker, the hotel has already received $143,600 through your deposit and scheduled installments. That amount covered the ceremony, dinner, staff, and the standard reception." He looked down at the tablet in his hands. "The remaining $96,400 covers the upgraded bar, additional floral installations, guest suites, late-night catering, the private brunch, and the extended ballroom reservation." That balance was due before those services continued. A murmur moved through the nearest tables. $96,400. A woman in a silver dress slowly lowered her champagne glass. Someone near the aisle whispered, "They haven't paid for the wedding?" Several guests reached for their phones. That was when Ethan finally understood. He looked up and scanned the ballroom. His eyes moved past his parents, Vanessa's family, his business partners, and the guests seated near the dance floor. Then he found me. I was sitting near the back of the room in a simple black dress, with an untouched glass of sparkling water in front of me. Our eyes met across hundreds of people. His face went white, then red, then hard. "Claire." He said my name like an accusation. He pushed through the tables and came toward me. Every head in the room turned with him. "What did you do?" He stopped in front of my table and lowered his voice. Unfortunately for him, the ballroom was so quiet that everyone nearby could still hear. I looked up at him. "What are you talking about?" "The card." He slammed it onto the table. "You closed the account?" I glanced at the black card and almost laughed. "Ethan, we've been divorced for 3 months." I leaned back in my chair. "Did you honestly believe I would continue paying your credit card bills after the divorce?" The whispers grew louder. "Divorced? That's his ex-wife? The card belongs to her? He tried to pay for his new wedding with his ex-wife's account?" Ethan's expression twisted. He reached for my arm. "Come outside. Now." I stepped away before he could touch me. "Don't." One word. That was all it took to stop his hand in midair. Vanessa appeared a moment later, lifting her wedding dress as she rushed across the ballroom. Her eyes were already wet. "Claire, today is our wedding day." Her voice trembled beautifully. Vanessa had always known how to cry without ruining her makeup. "No matter how angry you are, you had no right to do this here." She sounded as if she were the injured one. As if I had entered her life, slept with her husband, spent her money, and then arrived at her wedding to humiliate her. I stared at the woman who had once shared a college dorm room with me. She had borrowed my clothes, eaten Thanksgiving dinner with my family, slept on my couch after breakups, and called my mother Mom as a joke. Now she was standing beside my ex-husband in a wedding dress that had nearly been purchased with my money. I did this. I pointed at the card on the table. Vanessa, that account belongs to me. Her lips parted. You're standing in a $200,000 wedding, wearing a $20,000 dress, and you're calling it revenge because I refused to pay for it? Ethan told me the card was his. Did he? I looked at Ethan. Is that what you told her? The banquet manager stood a short distance away. He said nothing. His expression said enough. The original wedding budget had been $150,000. Then Ethan and Vanessa upgraded almost everything. Imported flowers, premium liquor, a live band, luxury rooms for selected guests, a midnight seafood station, a private brunch, and an additional hour in the ballroom. The final contract came to $240,000. By the wedding day, they had paid $143,600 through a deposit and scheduled installments. Ethan repeatedly assured the hotel that the remaining $96,400 would be charged to a black card with no preset spending limit. The card did have his name printed across the front, because 6 years earlier, I had added him as an authorized user on my account. When Ethan and I first married, his company was barely surviving. He needed to entertain clients, attend business dinners, and appear successful in front of investors. At the time, I owned a growing brand consulting firm. My income was stable. My credit was excellent. His was not. So I added him to my account. At first, he was careful. He told me before every major purchase. He sent me receipts. He thanked me. Then his business began to grow. The charges became larger. The explanations became shorter. Eventually, they stopped completely. I did not question him. I thought that was what marriage meant. Two people combining their lives. Two people building something together. I never imagined that one day he would use the trust one had given him to pay for a wedding to another woman. Vanessa stared at me. You knew he was using that card for the wedding. Why didn't you warn him that the account was closed? I raised an eyebrow. Why would I? Because you knew what would happen. The account is mine. I kept my voice calm. Our divorce agreement clearly states that each person is responsible for debts incurred after the marriage ended. Do I need my ex-husband's permission to close my own credit account? Vanessa had no answer. Ethan gave a bitter laugh. You haven't moved on. He folded his arms. That's why you came. You wanted to watch us fail. For a moment, I thought about the invitation that had arrived at my office 3 weeks earlier. It was thick ivory paper with gold lettering and a photograph of Ethan kissing Vanessa's forehead beneath the words, 2 lives, 1 forever. Vanessa had added a handwritten note. A person who has truly moved on should be able to wish others happiness. Ethan sent his own message that afternoon. We have both started new lives. I hope you can behave like an adult. They had not invited me because they wanted peace. They wanted an audience. They wanted me seated at the back of the ballroom while they displayed the dress, the flowers, and the life they claimed to have built only 3 months after our divorce. They wanted proof that they had won. The invitation was not what made me attend. The reason arrived in my inbox the next morning. The email came from the Aurelia Grand Hotel. Years earlier, I had created a reservation profile for one of Ethan's business events, and he had apparently reused the same profile for the wedding. The message reminded the account holder that a final balance of $96,400 would be charged to the card ending in 7719 after the cake cutting. I recognized the numbers immediately. The attached statement showed that the hotel had already received $143,600 through deposits and scheduled payments. That covered the ceremony, dinner, staff, and standard reception. The unpaid balance covered the upgraded bar, executive suites, late-night catering, private brunch, and extended ballroom time. Ethan had not destroyed the authorized user card after our divorce. He planned to use my closed account as the guarantee for nearly $100,000 in upgrades. I called the bank. The representative confirmed that I had closed the entire account 2 days after the divorce became final. I remembered sitting on the floor of my nearly empty living room, surrounded by moving boxes, when she asked whether I wanted to remove Ethan or close the account completely. Close it, I had said. She warned me that every card linked to it would stop working immediately. That is the point. Now the hotel still had the card number stored in its system, but it could not collect from an account that no longer existed. I called Rachel Monroe, my longtime attorney. Her firm handled both corporate and family law, and she had coordinated my divorce with one of the firm's family law partners. Rachel told me to save every email and avoid contacting Ethan. Do not interfere with the transaction, and do not accept responsibility for the debt, she said. You are not a party to the hotel contract. Should I warn the hotel? The hotel has already collected enough to cover the ceremony, dinner, staff, and ordinary reception. Its contract gives it the right to suspend the unpaid upgrades. The guests will not be asked to pay. Claire, stop trying to rescue Ethan before his emergency has even happened. That sentence stayed with me. For 6 years, rescuing Ethan had been my second job. I found replacement offices when leases failed, transferred money when payroll ran short, introduced lawyers when clients threatened to sue, and invented excuses when he disappointed our families. I became so skilled at protecting him that I stopped recognizing the difference between love and damage control. You do not have to attend, Rachel said. I know. Then why are you considering it? Because they invited me to witness their victory. I think I need to see what happens when I finally do nothing. Rachel was silent for a moment. Then she made me promise that I would not pay, sign anything, enter a private room with Ethan, or let him rewrite the situation. If I felt unsafe, I would leave. I promised. It was easy to say in a quiet office. It was harder to remember with Ethan standing in front of hundreds of people, looking at me as if his survival were still my responsibility. The night before the wedding, my mother arrived with Thai food, chocolate cake, and what she called enough judgment for everyone involved. Diane had never liked the way Ethan turned every mistake into my responsibility, though she had stayed out of our marriage while we were together. She noticed the black dress hanging from my closet door. So you're really going? I am. You do not owe them your presence, and you definitely do not owe them grace. I know. She gave me the look mothers reserve for daughters who are about to repeat an old pattern. My concern is not that you will make a scene. My concern is that they will make one, and you will feel responsible for calming it. I looked down at the noodles in front of me. Claire, some people spend years teaching you that their emergencies are your duties, she said. Ethan did that. Every reckless choice became a test of your loyalty. He was not always like that. No one is always anything. The question is what he became after he realized you would keep forgiving him. She squeezed my hand. If you go, go because you are ready to leave when you choose. Do not go hoping for an apology. I was not waiting for one. An apology could not return the years I spent doubting myself, erase the messages from the tablet, or remove Vanessa's shoes from the memory of my front hall. The next afternoon, I still almost stayed home. I stood in front of the mirror with one earring in my hand and imagined turning off my phone, ordering dinner, and allowing Ethan and Vanessa to discover the failed card without me. That would have been quieter, but quiet was not always the same as peace. For months, I had refused to discuss the divorce publicly. Ethan used my silence to tell people that our marriage ended because I was cold and obsessed with work. Vanessa claimed their relationship began after our separation. They rewrote the story because I was too exhausted to defend it. When you refuse to tell your own story, the people who hurt you are often happy to tell it for you. So I fastened the earring, put on the black dress, and at 6:15 that evening walked into the Aurelia Grand Hotel alone. The lobby smelled like white roses and expensive perfume. A string quartet played near the staircase. Hotel employees directed guests toward the ballroom while photographers captured smiling couples beneath an arch of flowers. For 1 second, I stopped near the entrance. Not because I wanted Ethan back. Because I recognized the design. The white roses. The gold candles. The crystal place settings. Years earlier, I had shown Ethan a photograph of a wedding reception with the same colors. I had saved it to a folder while planning our own ceremony, but we could not afford anything like it then. We married in a small restored warehouse with 80 guests and borrowed decorations. At the time, I loved every imperfect detail. Now Ethan had recreated the wedding I once imagined and given it to Vanessa. The realization hurt in a place I thought had already healed. Then I noticed the seating chart. My name was printed near the bottom. Claire Bennett. Table 29. No, Ms. No reference to my former married name. Just the name I had reclaimed after the divorce. Under it, someone had written in gold ink, "Special guest." I almost admired the cruelty. Claire. I turned and found Olivia Grant standing behind me. Olivia had been one of Ethan's college friends. Over the years, we had become friendly, though never close. She wore a dark green gown and held her coat over one arm. "I didn't think you would come," she said. Neither did I. Her eyes moved over my face, searching for signs of damage. "You look good." "So do you." An awkward silence followed. Olivia glanced toward the ballroom doors. "I heard the divorce was mutual." "I'm sure you did." Something in my tone made her look away. "Ethan said you had both been unhappy for a long time. Did he mention Vanessa?" Olivia's mouth tightened. "No. That's what I thought." Before she could respond, a photographer called for arriving guests to move forward. Olivia touched my arm lightly. "For what it's worth, this feels strange to a lot of people." I looked at the enormous portrait of Ethan and Vanessa beside the entrance. It should. Inside the ballroom, every surface glittered. The flowers alone must have cost more than my first car. Gold menus rested on white plates. Each table held a small bottle of champagne with the couple's initials printed on the label. EP and VR. A love worth waiting for. I found my seat at the back. The placement was deliberate. Close enough to see the stage. Far enough that I would not appear in family photographs. A waiter offered me champagne. I chose sparkling water instead. I wanted a clear head. The ceremony had already taken place in the hotel's rooftop garden. The reception began with a video showing Ethan and Vanessa's love story. According to the narration, they had reconnected after years of friendship and discovered that sometimes the right person had been beside you all along. The video did not mention that the right person had spent Thanksgiving in my home. It did not mention that she had texted me for restaurant recommendations while sleeping with my husband. It did not mention that their first weekend trip together happened while I was attending a conference in Boston. The guests applauded when the video ended. I kept my hands in my lap. Then the ballroom doors opened. Ethan and Vanessa entered beneath a shower of gold confetti. They looked radiant. Vanessa's smile widened when she saw me. Not softened. Widened. She leaned toward Ethan and whispered something. He followed her gaze to my table. For the briefest moment, satisfaction crossed his face. I understood then. They had been worried I would not come. My presence completed the performance. They needed the abandoned wife in the audience so everyone could see how thoroughly she had been replaced. Ethan raised his glass during the first toast. "To second chances," he said. The room applauded. His eyes found mine again. "And to having the courage to choose happiness, even when the choice is difficult." Several guests turned subtly toward me. Vanessa lowered her eyes with a modest smile. I lifted my water glass and took a sip. That was the first moment I knew I would not leave early. I wanted to hear every word they said before the truth arrived. Dinner lasted almost 2 hours. During the first course, Ethan's business partner gave a speech about loyalty. During the second, Vanessa's sister described their relationship as proof that timing is everything. By the main course, I had heard enough rewritten history to fill a book. At table 29, I sat with a retired aunt of Ethan's, 2 distant clients, Olivia, and a couple I had never met. No one knew how to speak to me. They discussed the weather, parking, the flower arrangements, and whether the steak was overcooked. Whenever Ethan's name came up, the conversation stopped. Finally, the older woman beside me leaned closer. "I'm Margaret," she said. "Ethan's father's cousin. I remember you." She had attended our wedding 6 years earlier and given us a silver serving bowl we never used. Margaret studied the stage, where Vanessa was laughing for a photographer. I was surprised by the invitation. So was I. "Did they ask whether you wanted to come?" "No." Her eyebrows rose. "I see." She looked down at her plate, then said quietly, "You don't have to answer this, but did the relationship begin before the divorce?" Olivia stopped moving her fork. The couple across from us pretended not to listen. Yes, I said. Margaret closed her eyes for a moment. I suspected as much. How? Vanessa attended the Parker family picnic last summer. I remembered that weekend. Ethan told me he had a supplier emergency in Milwaukee and could not come home. I had spent Saturday helping my mother clean her garage. Margaret continued. Ethan introduced her as a consultant. But they did not behave like colleagues when they thought no one was watching. Olivia set down her fork. Why didn't anyone tell Claire? Margaret gave her a tired look. People are brave after the truth becomes public. Before that, they call themselves cautious. The sentence landed heavily at the table. I was not angry with Margaret. Not exactly. For months after discovering the affair, I had tortured myself with the question of who else knew. I searched old conversations for hidden meanings. I remembered pauses, glances, invitations that stopped arriving. Eventually, I understood that betrayal rarely belongs to only two people. It creates a circle of silence around itself. Some people protect the secret. Others suspect, but do not want the inconvenience of knowing. I looked toward Ethan's parents. His father, Robert, was speaking to a man from Northgate. His mother, Elaine, smiled for photographs with Vanessa's family. I wondered whether they had believed Ethan's version of the divorce. Probably. He had always been skilled at telling a story in which his choices were reactions to someone else's failures. When his first business collapsed, the market was unfair. When he missed a deadline, the client was unreasonable. When he lost his temper, I had provoked him. When he cheated, I had made him feel invisible. Ethan and I had met 7 years earlier at a charity networking event. I was 29, newly successful enough to be proud and still insecure enough to be surprised when anyone noticed. Ethan was charming, attentive, and ambitious. He remembered my coffee order after one conversation and drove across Chicago in a snowstorm when I was sick. That version of him was real. The mistake I made was believing it would remain the only version. We married after 11 months. Vanessa helped him choose my ring, planned my bridal shower, and stood beside me as maid of honor. There was once a photograph I loved of her adjusting my veil while smiling at my reflection. After the affair, I could not look at it without wondering how long admiration had already been mixed with envy. Our first home was a narrow rented townhouse on the north side. Ethan worked from a folding desk in the spare room while my consulting business grew faster than either of us expected. At first, he celebrated every contract. Then people began introducing him as Claire Bennett's husband. The jokes started gently. Maybe I married above my tax bracket. Try not to become too famous to come home. Later, the humor disappeared. If I worked late, I cared only about money. If I suggested a budget, I was controlling. If I introduced him to a client, I was reminding him that he needed me. There was no way for me to succeed that did not offend him. Vanessa noticed the tension and began spending more time at our house. She listened when I described Ethan's insecurity and told me he only wanted to feel needed. Then she found small ways to need him. Could he check her car? Recommend an accountant? Help move furniture? Around Vanessa, he was admired and necessary. Around me, he saw evidence that he had fallen behind. I mistook their closeness for friendship. I was grateful that my husband and best friend got along. The first time I recognized something darker was at a rooftop dinner celebrating one of Ethan's contracts. His company payment had not cleared, so I paid. Vanessa raised her glass and said she had always known he would succeed. He smiled at her, then accused me in the car of humiliating him by reaching for the check. "You always need people to know you are the one holding everything together," he said. I apologized the next morning. He did not. That became the pattern. Ethan created the wound, and I repaired the room around it. As his company expanded, so did the expenses he called investments: a better office, a luxury car, private club dues, designer suits. When he asked to become an authorized user on my Black Card account, he said it would only be temporary until his company established stronger credit. The card arrived with his name printed on it. He kissed me and promised that one day he would make all my faith in him worthwhile. Standing in the ballroom years later, I understood that he had made it expensive. He had simply never made it worthwhile. The speeches continued. Vanessa's father talked about welcoming Ethan into the family. Robert Parker spoke next. He praised his son's determination and said marriage required honesty, patience, and respect. At the word honesty, Margaret made a small sound beside me. Then Vanessa took the microphone. I know some people questioned how quickly this wedding happened, she said. The room shifted. She glanced toward my table. But when you know, you know. Life is too short to delay happiness because other people are not ready to accept it. A few guests clapped uncertainly. Ethan took her hand. I felt Olivia looking at me. You don't have to sit through this, she whispered. I'm all right. Are you? I considered the question. No, I said. But I will be. After dinner, Ethan and Vanessa moved from table to table. They took photographs, accepted envelopes, and thanked guests for coming. When they reached table 29, Vanessa's smile was bright enough to be seen from space. Claire. She leaned down as if greeting an old friend. I'm glad you came. I'm sure you are. Ethan stood behind her with one hand at her waist. You found the place without trouble, he asked. The question was absurd. I had arranged 2 of his company events at the same hotel. No trouble. Vanessa looked at my untouched champagne bottle. You should celebrate with us. I'm driving. Oh. Her smile did not move. Still planning everything carefully. There was an insult beneath the words. Vanessa had always preferred cruelty that could be denied later. Ethan glanced around the table. Claire has always been practical. That must be why she came in black, Vanessa said lightly. The couple across from us stopped smiling. I looked at her white gown. And you came dressed as a promise you already broke. Vanessa's smile finally slipped. Ethan's hand tightened at her waist. Let's not do this, he said. You came to my table. For 1 second, something raw passed between us. Then a photographer called their names, and they turned away. Vanessa recovered first. She lifted her chin, smiled, and walked toward the dance floor. Ethan followed. As they moved away, Margaret whispered, Good for you. I almost smiled. The cake cutting began at 9:20. The hotel had scheduled the final balance confirmation immediately afterward, before the premium bar and late-night service continued. I knew because the email listed the timeline. At 9:28, the banquet manager approached Ethan near the main table. At 9:30, Ethan handed him the black card. At 9:31, the first transaction failed. At 9:32, the manager tried again. And at 9:33, in front of everyone they had invited to witness their triumph, the account was declared closed. Now Ethan stood before me, accusing me of ruining a night he had planned to charge to my name. You are right about one thing, I told him. I knew the card would fail tonight. His eyes narrowed. But I did not create this disaster. I gestured toward the ballroom. You selected the venue. You signed the contracts. You ordered the upgrades. You promised to pay. My voice remained steady. All I did was stop protecting you from the consequences. Ethan's face hardened. That's enough, Claire. There are more than 300 people here. He looked around the ballroom as if the guests had become my responsibility too. Do you have to make this so ugly? I did not make it ugly. I stood. You used your ex-wife's credit card to pay for a wedding to the woman you were sleeping with during your marriage. The words moved through the room faster than fire. Vanessa's mother turned sharply toward her daughter. Robert Parker rose from the head table. You told us the relationship began after the separation. His voice carried across the ballroom. Vanessa's face changed. It is not what you think. No, I said. It is worse. I opened my purse. Ethan stepped toward me. Claire. For the first time that night, I heard real fear in his voice. What are you doing? You said I came for revenge. I unlocked my phone. Maybe everyone should understand why. The screenshots were dated. The messages came from the old family tablet in the house Ethan and I once shared. The tablet had been connected to his cloud account. He believed deleting conversations from his phone erased them forever. He did not realize that the backups were still syncing to another device. I found the backups in the days after I returned early from New York, before the divorce petition was filed. The first message was from Vanessa. Claire is going to New York again next week. When is she going to stop watching you all the time? Ethan replied, she won't notice anything. She only cares about work. In another conversation, Vanessa asked, are you really going to leave her? Ethan wrote, once the Northgate contract is secure, I won't need her connections anymore. Then came the discussion about the wedding. Vanessa, the hotel wants a larger deposit. Do we have enough money? Ethan, use Claire's card for now. She never checks the statements carefully. Vanessa, what if she closes it after the divorce? Ethan, she won't. She still thinks we can stay friends. The final message was the one I had never forgotten. All she knows how to do is make money. Not spending it would be a waste. I did not hand my phone to the crowd. I simply turned the screen toward Robert, Elaine, Margaret, and several relatives standing nearby. They saw enough. Olivia moved closer and read over Margaret's shoulder. Her face tightened. You told me Claire knew about you too before anything happened, she said to Vanessa. Vanessa looked at her. That is not what I said. You said Claire had emotionally left the marriage and that you and Ethan were practically together with her permission. I never used those words. You used exactly those words. More guests were standing now. The information traveled from table to table in whispers. Ethan's colleagues avoided his eyes. Vanessa's sister had stopped recording and lowered her phone. Vanessa's face lost all color. Ethan looked as though someone had removed the floor beneath him. That is not the full conversation, he said. You selected the parts that make me look bad. The complete backup is with my attorney. I locked my phone. You can explain the context in court. Court. Vanessa turned toward Ethan. He stared at me. I let the silence sit for a moment. 2 years earlier, I had introduced Ethan to the purchasing director at Northgate Development Group. Northgate was developing a commercial complex worth several $100 million, and Ethan's company was too small to qualify on its own. I wrote the recommendation, arranged the meetings, and personally assured Northgate that he could perform the work. The contract transformed his business. He hired 30 employees, moved into a larger office, and appeared in local magazines as a self-made entrepreneur. I read that description beside him at breakfast and said nothing. During the divorce, Rachel's firm reviewed our financial records. She brought in a forensic accountant named Daniel Cho, who found 3 Northgate compliance reports carrying my company letterhead and electronic signature. The reports claimed that my firm had reviewed Ethan's vendors and approved a subcontractor called VR Strategic Solutions. I had never seen the reports. My signature had been copied from an old recommendation letter. Daniel then traced the payments. After using the forged reports to present VR Strategic Solutions as an approved subcontractor, Ethan's company transferred hundreds of thousands of dollars to it for consulting and compliance work that had never been performed. The company had no employees, no real office, and was registered to a mailbox in Evanston. Its owner was Vanessa Reed. The affair was no longer only personal. Ethan and Vanessa had used my name to make her shell company look legitimate and used Northgate money to fund it. How much? I asked. So far, $412,000 in questionable transfers, Daniel said. Possibly more. The money had moved through several accounts, and Daniel refused to issue a final report until he could document the chain. He spent the next 4 months tracing transfers, comparing invoice metadata, and confirming that the listed services did not exist. His final report was completed 8 days before the wedding. There had been a time when I would have called Ethan first and given him an opportunity to invent an explanation. Instead, I remembered his message to Vanessa. Once the Northgate contract is secure, I will not need her connections anymore. Send the report, I told Rachel. Northgate's legal department opened an internal audit. On the afternoon of the wedding, it formally served a document preservation notice on Ethan's company, its outside counsel, and its chief financial officer. Ethan had apparently ignored the calls and emails while posing for photographs. The Northgate contract was his company's largest source of revenue. By the time the banquet manager returned to our table, Ethan's wedding bill was no longer the most dangerous number in the room. The ballroom doors opened behind the manager, and 2 hotel employees entered quietly. One spoke to the bar staff. The other approached the DJ. Mr. Parker, I apologize for interrupting, the banquet manager said, but the hotel needs a valid payment arrangement. If the balance is not settled by 9:48, we will close the premium bar, cancel the late-night food service and private brunch, release the unpaid guest suites, and end the ballroom reservation at the original contracted time. Ethan turned immediately to his father. Give him your card. Robert Parker did not move. You told me this wedding was fully funded. It is. This is temporary. Pay it tonight, and I will reimburse you tomorrow. With what? Robert asked. The project that may be under investigation? Ethan insisted that I was exaggerating and that Northgate was only part of a marital dispute. I placed the envelope on the table. This is Northgate's preservation notice and my attorney's statement regarding the unauthorized use of my signature, I said. It was served on your company this afternoon. Robert looked at his son. Is any of it true? Ethan did not answer. His mother stepped beside Robert, pale and shaking. Tell us she is lying. She is trying to punish me. That is not what your mother asked, Robert said. Ethan pulled out his phone and called his chief financial officer, Martin Hale. He put the call on speaker only because his hands were shaking too badly to hold the phone close. Martin, I need a wire for $96,400. Tonight. There was a long pause. From which account? The operating account. We cannot do that. What do you mean, we cannot? Northgate's notice reached us at 4:12. Counsel instructed us to preserve records and restrict non-essential transfers until we understand the exposure. Payroll clears Monday. 2 vendors are already past due, and there is not enough unrestricted cash to cover both operations and your personal wedding bill. Ethan glanced around the room. This is not personal. It is a company event. No, Martin said. It is not. I will not classify it that way, and I will not authorize it. The call ended. One of Ethan's business partners, seated near the dance floor, quietly removed his company lapel pin and left without saying goodbye. The banquet manager offered Ethan another option, a same-night wire from a personal account or a new credit card accompanied by a signed personal guarantee. Ethan opened 2 banking applications. One card was declined for the amount. The other did not have enough available credit. Vanessa turned to her parents. Dad, please. We can repay you after the honeymoon. Her father's expression hardened. We already paid for the dress and contributed to the trip. You told us the rest was handled. The honeymoon may not be handled either, I said. A travel agency confirmation had also been sent to the old profile. Their 12-day Italian honeymoon used the same black card as its guarantee, and the final payment had not yet been collected. Vanessa grabbed Ethan's arm. You told me it was paid. I said it was arranged. That is not the same thing. Her father stepped back. The rest is your responsibility. The wedding began to unravel. Guests stood and requested their coats. The band stopped between songs. A waiter removed unopened premium bottles, and the DJ lowered the music to a faint instrumental track. By 9:40, most guests had already decided they would rather leave than watch Ethan search the room for another person willing to save him. 10 minutes earlier, he and Vanessa had been the center of a perfect celebration. Now every flower, sweet, and bottle looked like evidence of a promise they could not afford. Vanessa turned toward me. Are you happy now? Her voice shook. You ruined my wedding. I did not ruin it. I looked at her. I stopped financing it. Tears filled her eyes. You have known me since college. Yes. I nodded. I drove you to the emergency room at 2 in the morning when you were sick. When you could not afford rent, I let you move into my apartment. When your mother needed surgery, I loaned you money. When your last boyfriend left you, I stayed awake with you until sunrise. I stepped closer. And while I was traveling for work, you walked into my bedroom. Vanessa's tears finally fell. For years, the sight of her crying had made me soften. That night, I could not tell whether she felt guilty or simply embarrassed. I did not plan for it to happen, she whispered. I almost laughed. No one accidentally carries on an affair for a year. You were never home. There it was. The excuse beneath the tears. You always had a meeting, a flight, a client. Ethan was lonely. And you decided to comfort him in my bed? Her face tightened. You made him feel small. I studied her. For months, I had wondered what story Vanessa told herself. Now I knew. She did not see herself as a thief. She saw herself as the woman who appreciated a man his successful wife had neglected. That story allowed her to accept my help, sit at my table, and sleep with my husband without believing she was cruel. You did not love him because I failed to, I said. You wanted what I had, and he wanted someone who would admire him without expecting him to grow. Vanessa shook her head. You think you are better than everyone. No. I picked up my purse. I finally understand that being useful to people is not the same as being loved by them. Ethan stepped between us. Stop attacking her. The instinct was so familiar that it almost hurt. When Vanessa betrayed me, he protected her. When he betrayed me, he expected me to protect him. I looked at him. Do you remember the cheesecake? His face changed. He knew exactly what I meant. I discovered their affair the previous May. I finished a business trip in New York one day early and did not tell Ethan. At the airport, I bought his favorite cheesecake. I imagined surprising him. I imagined dinner, wine, and a quiet evening together. When I entered our house, I saw a pair of women's heels near the front door. Nude leather. Thin straps. A small gold buckle near the ankle. I recognized them because I had helped Vanessa choose them. The bedroom door was not completely closed. I stood in the hallway with the cheesecake in my hand and listened. Ethan told her I would eventually ask for a divorce on my own. He said I was controlling. Too focused on work. Too successful. He claimed my ambition made him feel less like a man. Vanessa laughed softly. That is because she never understood you. I did not burst into the room. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I walked out of the house with the cheesecake still in my hands. I placed it in a trash can 2 blocks away. Then I sat in my car and called Rachel. I need the family law partner you mentioned, I said. Rachel had served as my corporate attorney for 4 years, but her firm also handled divorce and asset protection cases. She did not pretend to be the specialist herself. Instead, she contacted the partner who had the right experience and told me to come directly to their office. Are you safe? She asked. Yes. Then drive here. We will handle the rest one step at a time. 3 hours later, I was sitting across from her with my wedding ring on the table. That was the moment my marriage ended. Signing the papers came later. Ethan did not react the way I expected when I confronted him 2 days afterward. He did not apologize first. He asked how much I knew. Then he asked whether I had proof. Only after I told him about the tablet did he begin to cry. He said the affair had been a mistake. He said Vanessa understood parts of him that I ignored. He said he never intended to hurt me. He said he still loved me. People often imagine betrayal as a single terrible act. In reality, the deepest wound comes from watching the person who hurt you search for the exact words that might keep access to your life. Ethan wanted Vanessa. He also wanted my money, my contacts, my reputation, and the security of knowing I would remain nearby. When I told him the marriage was over, his tears stopped. You are willing to throw away 6 years without even trying, he asked. I stared at him. You threw it away one message, one lie, and one hotel room at a time. The divorce took 10 weeks. Ethan delayed financial disclosures. He argued about furniture he did not want. He demanded partial ownership of my company and withdrew the claim only after Rachel produced the prenuptial agreement. He wanted the house but not the mortgage. He wanted the car but not the loan. He wanted to remain an authorized user on the black card until his company completed a refinancing process. Rachel laughed when his attorney made that request. The authorized user card was not listed as an asset in the final agreement because it belonged to my personal account. Ethan was required to destroy it. Apparently, he had not. At the courthouse, after the judge signed the final order, he followed me into the hallway. You will regret making this permanent, he said. I looked at the man I had once planned to grow old with. No, I answered. I regret how long I waited. He told people I was bitter. 3 months later, he sent me an invitation to his wedding. Now he stood in that wedding reception, holding the consequences of every choice he believed I would forgive. Ethan came toward me again. This time, his voice was quieter. Claire. We were married for 6 years. You cannot stand here and watch the hotel throw me out in front of my family. I am not throwing you out. I put on my coat. I am refusing to pay. $96,000 is not a lot of money to you. He spoke softly, almost reasonably, as if that made the request less insane. I nodded. You are right. Hope flashed across his face. For me, it is not an impossible amount. His shoulders loosened. I continued. But that does not mean you deserve it. His expression changed again. For 6 years, I paid your office rent when you were short. I guaranteed your loans. I brought you clients. I explained your failures to people who trusted my judgment. I looked around at the faces watching us. Even after I discovered the affair, I gave you a quiet divorce. I did not call your parents. I did not contact your investors. I did not publish the messages. I gave you more dignity than you ever gave me. I tapped the envelope on the table. Today is the first day you will pay for your own choices. Ethan stared at me. You are trying to destroy me. No. I picked up my purse. You destroyed yourself every time you believed I would never discover the truth. Every time you believed I would never leave. Every time you believed I would always forgive you. Vanessa rushed forward and blocked my path. You cannot just walk away. Her voice was desperate now. What are we supposed to do about the hotel bill? Ask your husband. I looked past her at Ethan. He stood in front of everyone today and promised to take care of you for the rest of his life. I smiled faintly. This seems like an excellent time for him to prove it. I walked around her. Behind me, the arguments began almost immediately. Ethan called his bank. Vanessa demanded that he contact his company's finance director. The banquet manager instructed staff to close the premium bar. Robert Parker refused to provide a credit card. Vanessa's father asked the hotel whether the unused food could reduce the balance. The manager explained that the contracted charges remained due. The band stopped playing. Guests continued leaving. Near the exit, Olivia caught up with me. Claire. I turned. She looked back toward the ballroom, then at me. I am sorry. For what? For believing him without asking you. I studied her face. Olivia was not responsible for my marriage, but her apology reached a place I did not expect. Thank you, I said. She hesitated. Do you need someone to walk you out? No. I need to do that part alone. She nodded and stepped aside. The reception had been scheduled to continue until 1 in the morning. By 9:40, most of the guests were already leaving. At 9:50, after no valid payment method had been provided, the hotel officially ended the reception. But by then, none of it belonged to me. The moment I walked outside, the cold Chicago air struck my face. I stopped on the hotel steps and took a deep breath. For the first time in months, breathing felt easy. My phone rang. It was my mother, Diane. Is it over? It is over. Did you cry? I smiled. No. There was a pause. You have always sounded like that when you lie. I looked at the traffic passing under the city lights. My eyes began to burn. Mom, I am just hungry. Come home, she said. I made chicken noodle soup and grilled cheese. 30 minutes later, I was sitting in my mother's kitchen. Steam rose from the soup. She did not ask for details. She did not ask whether Ethan apologized. She did not ask what Vanessa wore or how the guests reacted. She simply placed a grilled cheese sandwich in front of me. I made it halfway through the soup before the tears came. They were not for Ethan. They were not for the wedding. They were for the woman I used to be. The woman who confused patience with love. The woman who believed sacrifice was the same as loyalty. The woman who explained every disappointment as a normal part of marriage. She had tried so hard. She had simply chosen the wrong person. My mother reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. You did not lose, she said. You finally stopped competing for something that was never worthy of you. A video from the wedding appeared online the next morning. Someone had recorded the moment the banquet manager announced that the account was closed. Another guest uploaded part of the argument. By the end of the week, thousands of strangers had opinions about me. Some called me heartless. Some said I should have paid the bill for the sake of the guests. Others said I should have exposed Ethan and Vanessa the day I discovered the affair. A morning radio show spent 6 minutes debating whether an ex-wife had a moral obligation to warn a former husband that an authorized card had been canceled. Rachel sent me the clip with one sentence. Do not respond. I did not. My company received dozens of emails. Most were supportive. A few accused me of humiliating a hard-working businessman. One message came from a woman named Sabrina. She wrote that she had spent 12 years paying her husband's debts because she believed loyalty meant never letting him fail. She had finally left the year before. Your story reminded me that saying no is not cruelty, she wrote. Sometimes it is the first honest thing we do. I saved that email. The hotel did not charge the guests. It retained the money already paid under the contract and pursued Ethan for the remaining balance. The travel agency canceled the Italy reservation when the final payment failed. Vanessa's parents lost part of the honeymoon deposit they had contributed. 2 weeks after the wedding, Northgate suspended all new work with Ethan's company. Daniel's audit expanded. The investigators found altered invoices, inflated subcontractor costs, and unauthorized use of my company documents. Several transfers led back to Vanessa's shell company. Vanessa later claimed Ethan had told her the payments were legitimate consulting fees. Ethan claimed Vanessa had managed the paperwork. They began blaming each other before the investigation was complete. 2 months later, Northgate terminated the contract. Without that revenue, Ethan's company collapsed quickly. Employees left. Vendors demanded payment. The bank called in a line of credit that I had once helped him obtain. To avoid a long civil case, Ethan signed a settlement agreement. He sold his office building and then the house we had lived in during our marriage. Rachel called me after the settlement was finalized. You could pursue additional damages, she said. Would it change anything? It might recover more money. I have enough money. She understood. For the first time, enough was not a number in an account. It was a boundary. I wanted my name cleared, my business protected, and my life returned to me. I did not need to spend another year measuring Ethan's downfall. My company survived the investigation without damage. Northgate issued a written statement confirming that my firm had not authorized the fraudulent documents. A few months later, they hired us directly for a separate branding project. The first time I entered their boardroom without Ethan beside me, I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt calm. That was better. A year after the wedding, my attorney forwarded an email. The subject line read, Parker vs. Parker, Dissolution of Marriage. Vanessa had filed for divorce after Ethan lost the company. I did not open the attachment. I did not ask what happened between them. I did not need to know. I moved into an apartment near the lake. I redesigned my office, started running in the mornings, and learned to turn off my phone on weekends. At first, rest made me anxious. I had spent so long believing my value came from solving problems that an empty Saturday felt like failure. Slowly, I learned otherwise. I took a pottery class and made 3 terrible bowls. I traveled to Vancouver with my mother and let someone else plan the itinerary. I had dinner with friends without checking my email under the table. I went to therapy and admitted that I had recognized Ethan's selfishness years before the affair, but kept negotiating with it. The therapist asked why. Because leaving felt like admitting I had made a mistake, I said. And staying? Staying allowed me to believe I could still turn the mistake into a success. She nodded. Sometimes we remain loyal to our own past decisions long after the people involved have stopped deserving us. That sentence changed something in me. I stopped trying to prove that the 6 years had not been wasted. They had taught me what I would never accept again. That was enough. Sometimes, I still remember the wedding night. I remember Ethan holding the useless black card and staring at me as if I had committed an unforgivable betrayal. But the closed account was never the thing he truly could not accept. What frightened him was the realization that the woman who always paid, explained, forgave, and stayed no longer existed. Closing the account took 1 phone call. Ending a 6-year marriage took much longer. I did not fully understand what freedom meant until I walked out of that hotel alone and heard my heels striking the stone steps behind me. Freedom was not the date printed on my divorce papers. It was not revenge. It was not watching Ethan lose his business or Vanessa lose her dream wedding. Freedom was the moment someone reached for me again, expecting money, forgiveness, and another chance, and I finally felt no guilt when I said, "No." Then I turned around and